Hey guys, what's up? We are back with another video today, and today we are doing a different type of video. We are in the middle of mock draft season, and I have been releasing all sorts of mock drafts, almost one for every single one of the 32 teams in the NFL. Just a few left to go before I've hit all 32 and get into the real crunch time, as April is just a couple days away. So let's get into today's video as we talk about Notre Dame's national championship chances in this upcoming football season. Before we get into it, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. If you're a Notre Dame fan, help a fellow Notre Dame fan out and hit that subscribe button. I am closing in on 1,000 subscribers. Like this video if you enjoy it. Comment all your thoughts and opinions down below as always. Also, make sure you check out the website where I post articles talking about the XFL, talking about the Cubs, talking about Notre Dame and the Bears, stuff that isn't able to make it onto the YouTube channel, so I write it into articles. So before we begin, let's start with this. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I'm going to set all of that bias aside, and I'm going to lay out the flat case. Can Notre Dame win a national championship in the year 2023? So you guys can get mad at me or whatever for me being a Notre Dame fan and call it bias, but hear me out. So, first, let's review Notre Dame's schedule. Let's really review it in three different parts, starting with the three big games: USC and Southern Cal, Clemson, and Ohio State. So with these three big games, we're going to set them aside for a moment, and then we're going to get back to them in a second, and we're going to digress those. So let's begin with the other games. You have Navy and Dublin, Ireland. The last time that you played Navy in Ireland, may I remind you, you went to the national championship game, but you also got your rear end smashed by Alabama and Eddie Lacy. So do take that with a grain of salt. Maybe that's a tell. Maybe playing Navy in Ireland is a tell. But let's get into this part as well. Next, the following week, you play Tennessee State. For the first time ever, Notre Dame will play an FCS opponent. Tennessee State is coached by Ed George, the famous Ohio State running back, and I think that's part of the reason is the Marcus Freeman, Ohio State connection and stuff like that. Either way, and it's an HBCU. Really, that's the reason why it's on the schedule, is it's an HBCU, pay them some money, and be able to help out the program, which is a good thing in some senses. Some Notre Dame fans would rather not play an FCS program. But both of those first two games, Navy, that's just an annoying game as all get out. But luckily, you will play the triple option at the first week of the year rather than in the middle of the year. And then you play Tennessee State. So really, the physicality that Navy is going to annoy you with, Tennessee State isn't going to be able to maximize or take advantage of that because they just simply do not have the bodies. Then you play at North Carolina State. Well, North Carolina State lost Devin Leary. They lost a bunch of players last year. They do have some of their defensive players returning and do have some talent at linebacker and in the secondary, but overall their offensive talent is pretty much gone. So Tennessee State should not be, or not Tennessee, NC State should not be a difficult game either. Now moving on to Central Michigan. Central Michigan is not going to be as tough as they were in previous years past. Talking about 2021, 2022, they struggled even though they had high expectations with Lou Nichols coming into play as being their running back. And they really disappointed. And this year it's not going to get much better. Offensively, they have some weapons, but overall not really much. Then we're going to skip over Ohio State and move into Duke. It is important to not overlook this game. At Duke, with Mike Elko being the head coach of Duke and Riley Leonard being the quarterback, this is probably going to be, in my opinion, the third toughest game you'll play all year. Only ahead is Ohio State and Southern Cal. That's it. Other than that, I don't think that there's a tougher game on the schedule. I think playing at Duke is it's not that it's a hard environment or anything like that. I went and I watched the game at Duke when Notre Dame played them a couple of years ago in North Carolina because I live closer to Durham, North Carolina than I do to South Bend. But with Duke, this is a good team that just won 9 games last year under a first-year head coach. And even though there is a possibility of some step back, especially on the defensive end with losses with linebacker Shaka Hayward and so on and so forth, I think that this is still a very winnable game, though it may be a struggle. Then you play at Louisville. Louisville got a big increase in head coaching prowess in adding Jeff Brom, but Jeff Brom, other than defeating really high-ranking opponents that play in the Big Ten, he kind of struggles against big-time opponents, namely Alabama and Clemson and stuff like that. Or not Clemson, I'm sorry. But basically, I don't think you're going to have much of an issue with playing Louisville. I think that this will be a win, and I don't think it's going to be one of your toughest games all year. Then you're going to head and play, I'm going to skip over USC, then you have a bye week, and then you play Pitt. Pitt has Phil Jurkovec, and that is about the only interesting thing about this game is that you play Phil Jurkovec again, and this is just so annoying. Pitt's not that great of an opponent, but beating Pat Narduzzi should just be fun. Then you have a game at Clemson, and you have another bye week because you play in week 0 with Navy. Then you play Wake Forest. This should be an easy win. This is Sam Hartman's returning game, even though, well, the game will be at Notre Dame, but it's senior night. Sam Hartman will be playing his former team. Should be some interesting headlines, but that should be about it. Then you have at Stanford. Stanford is a trash heap of flaming garbage. Here's the problem. You lost to that trash heap of flaming garbage that the only other team that they beat that year was a toothpaste company. A toothpaste company in Colgate. So, basically the point that I'm making is this. You shouldn't lose to them. You haven't lost to them generally other than last year, and, well, that means you really shouldn't lose to them. And if you do, I'm going to be really mad. That's all I can say. So we're now going to move into the 3 games, and we're going to go through each of them by their date. First, September 23rd, that Saturday in September, the Buckeyes of Ohio State head to South Bend to play the Irish. So let's start off with this. Notre Dame has a case to win the national championship because of this reason. You beat Ohio State, you beat Clemson, and you lose to USC, or you switch the 2 games, you lose to Ohio State, and you beat USC. You knock out one of the conferences most likely. If you beat USC, you definitely knock out the Pac-12 because there's just nobody else in the Pac-12 unless if Cam Rising in Utah take off or Oregon with Dan Lanning take off or something like that. It would have to be a little bit crazy. Michigan, you don't knock out a whole conference if you knock out Ohio State, though Ohio State losing a 3rd straight year to Michigan, I find it highly unlikely, and as if Ohio State beats Michigan and you beat Ohio State, that means you knock out the conference, because, well, Ohio State is not going to lose in the Big Ten championship game to the Big Ten West. So, setting that premise up there. Also with this, Notre Dame has an elite starting quarterback for the first time in, well, over a decade since Jimmy Clausen was around. This is an elite starting quarterback that has the skills and the trait that no other Notre Dame quarterback has had except possibly DeShone Kizer in the past decade. And Kizer didn't stay around, and that's the reason for him having so many struggles in the NFL was exactly the reason Brian Kelly said he wasn't ready. And to add on top of that, you also do have a new offensive coordinator, and that needs to be taken into perspective in Gerard Parker. Gerard Parker was an offensive coordinator at West Virginia previously, so this isn't going to be, I think, as much of a detriment as some people make it out to be. Parker has called plays at both Purdue and at West Virginia, has been able to be a passing game coordinator at West Virginia as well as Purdue, and coached up the tight ends for one season, albeit, but I do find it interesting to see what will go on there with Parker as OC. But here's the other thing is this. Hartman is a much better quarterback. And even though wide receivers last year were an issue for Notre Dame, it's also because you had 5'2" Drew Pine that has a noodle arm, that his arm is probably weaker than my own. And I'm sorry, but he couldn't make the ball 35 yards down the field to Braden Lindsey without Lindsey having to one-hand grab it in front of a Navy defender. So here's the thing. Now you have a quarterback that can at least throw it 15 yards without it sputtering halfway across the field. And now, with all of those recent advantages, you are now able to use that dynamic run game that you have with your Thunder and Lightning of Audric Estime and Logan Diggs, something that you have not been able to do the entire time that you're there. Not only to add on to that, but you have one of the best offensive lines in all of college football, and it's not even close. Joe Alt and Blake Fisher are both premier offensive tackles that will probably be first-round picks, with Joe Alt arguably a top 5 pick that PFF is just drooling over. You now also have a tight end room that doesn't have the star-studded lineup of Michael Mayer, but also has the ability to have depth with guys like Eli Raridan and Holton Stiles and stuff like that to be able to add on to a group of receiving threats that is really good. I think guys like Jordan Johnson isn't around anymore, where they're just not going to do anything. You saw that in the production last year throughout the year that started to increase, especially later on in the year whenever Tyler Buckner came back against South Carolina. You started to see the ability of these dynamic wide receiver threats that wasn't around all year because they just weren't able to get the ball. So moving back to Ohio State. Ohio State does not have that quarterback position solidified, and this is early on in the year. You're only in week 4 of college football, week 5 for Notre Dame because they played in week 0 against Navy, but this is something that is incredibly important to look at. This is a position that is not solidified by a Heisman contender, and also an offensive line that will lose both of its tackles in DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson Jr. that were extremely good, though you don't have the defensive line in Notre Dame to be able to exploit that. So here's the thing. I think that beating Ohio State is a lot more likely than a lot of people think. And if you're able to beat Ohio State, you can build upon that momentum, though you do need to look at a trap game in Duke the following week. So now we're going to move on to Southern Cal. The reason why I keep switching between USC and Southern Cal is I live in the state of South Carolina, and South Carolina fans get mad at me when I say USC, and they think I'm talking about South Carolina. Either way, point being, Southern Cal is run by one person and one person alone. That's it. It is Caleb Williams. You shut down Caleb Williams, and by no means am I saying it's easy to shut down Caleb Williams. It is not. But what I am saying is that if you don't have refs that literally let people assault people, by literally just dragging them down by every fiber of their clothing, like they were last year, just allowed to mug people, and they thought it was the streets of LA, and you were just allowed to mug anybody, and you weren't going to get in trouble for it, until later on in the game when the game was out of hand and Notre Dame had already lost, even though they had put up a very good performance. And here's the thing is this: Notre Dame's secondary is much better than it was last year. Between Cam Hart, Benjamin Morrison, you're going to have a tough time being able to just beat Notre Dame. And I know Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart were both there, but Ben Morrison was a freshman, and Cam Hart is even better come this year. I think that you're going to have a much better secondary. Plus, if Notre Dame is what they should have done in the last game, physically able to dominate Southern Cal in the trenches, because you should be able to dominate the Beach Boys in the trenches, because that's what you're supposed to do, rather than running 1.7 yards or whatever their yards per game is, because you have Audric Estime, who is literally Derrick Henry and reincarnated on the college level. The dude just mauls, and you don't give him the ball? I don't understand that. But here's the thing is this. Hear me out. Then you play at Death Valley. And as you combine each of these 3 games, there are teams that are very beatable, especially the Tigers. The Tigers don't have a proven starting quarterback. Notre Dame does. The Tigers have a defense that is going to have to prove a lot in this upcoming season, though they are expected to be good, and I do expect them to be good. But this is an offense that is completely, utterly 100% non-proven, so don't act like it is otherwise. I am so sick and tired of Clemson fans coming up and telling me, and I live near Clemson, South Carolina, about 10 minutes from it, that they're going to beat Notre Dame and stuff like that. You're not. Until proven otherwise. I get that Notre Dame, that was one win, but now we're talking about a series that in the last in the last 5 matchups, it's 3-2 Clemson. But in the last matchup, Notre Dame kicked your rear end so bad that it almost kicked you out of playoff contention because it was such an embarrassment that you had to let South Carolina beat you to fully. But here's the point that I'm making is this. Notre Dame's opponents this year are not as difficult as many people think. If Notre Dame is able to use the explosiveness of their running game and passing game to be able to put up points that they never have before, then it's a game in which Notre Dame is the offensive powerhouse coming in, not just the defensive grinded out smash mouth type of football team that we're just a little bit more athletic version of Wisconsin. This is what I'm saying. Notre Dame has a real shot at a national champion this year. There is not a Georgia. And Michigan and all of their gold and blue can do whatever they want because I don't care. The green and gold are coming for the natty this year. Let's go. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video if you enjoy it, and let me know your opinions because I'm sure there will be plenty. Let's go Irish, and let's go win the 2024 National Championship. And as always, have a great day. Bye, guys.